Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, where we navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between. Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Cruise Control Podcast, and today I'm super excited to start what I'm calling is our Visionary series, where I sit down with some super successful entrepreneurs who have really made their mark in the world and in the business world from, kind of starting from scratch like a lot of us do. And I'm super excited to get these guys involved. I'll be meeting today with Peter Taunton. I did want to mention up front, go to detailersroadmap.com. Detailers Roadmap, that's who this podcast is for. We build websites and do SEO and a lot of other services for PPF, tent, wrap, and detailing industry. So go to detailersroadmap.com, book a demo today. Hey, I want to run through Peter's bio because it's very impressive, and I think it sets the stage for kind of who we're talking to. Peter founded Lift Brands, one of the largest wellness brands in the world, with over 6,000 franchises or licensees spanning across 3 brands in 28 countries. Peter's currently the CEO and founder of Nautical Bowls and Acai. And you have to tell me how to pronounce this every time. Acai Bowl franchise concept. This is Peter's 4th franchise brand. So I'd love to talk franchises too in this. But in 2010, Peter was Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year, the first one, and is currently a Forbes Masterclass instructor at the Forbes School of Business. Peter also wrote a #1 best-selling book sold on Amazon called Impossible Hill, which shares 30 years of real-life stories laying out the mindset that helped Peter build his business empire. He's ever committed to coaching and inspiring people both in their business and personal lives as they navigate through life, striving to light a fire within and make their impossible dreams possible. Peter and I got to know each other on another one of my podcasts, and just such a pleasure to get to know him. He's very inspiring. He and I spoke a little bit about my brands. And so when I started thinking about who I wanted on this little series, I was like, I got to get Peter on here because he has a passion for small businesses. And I mean, he definitely has the resume and the skill set and the knowledge to share today. So Peter, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on board Cruise Control and spend some time with us.
Yeah, no, Kevin, you know what? It's my pleasure. I love doing this, as you said. And I love small business because that's where I started. Right. So I'm living proof that the American dream is alive and well, that anyone can do it. If you just have the grit and the kind of no quit attitude, and maybe some timing, good execution. There's a number of things that come into play, but I'm living proof that you can grow up as a pretty poor kid in the Midwest and build, several $100 million company. It's all possible.
That's awesome. So one of the things I always ask on this podcast is for the superhero backstory, right? So when we're watching Marvel movies or DC movies or whatever, there's always this backstory that comes with the superhero. And I always like to get the guest's backstory. So you just kind of alluded to it a little bit, but, take as long as you want and just kind of set the stage for how it is that you got here and
Sure.
all that.
Sure. And I enjoy doing it because it brings context. I think in my story, there's a lot of people out there that can find bits and pieces within their story. So look, I grew up youngest of 7. I have an identical twin. So technically the 2 of us are the youngest of 7 kids. I grew up in a small little Midwestern town in Minnesota. I went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse, and my father had a small grocery store in that little hometown that we grew up in. And I got my first break when I was in my early 20s to turn around a failing health club. But, backing up a little bit, I worked at my father's grocery store. As a kid, 8 years old is when I went to work, selling popcorn in front of his grocery store. But I didn't realize at the time that many of the life lessons I was going to learn would be through that lens of an 8-year-old boy, literally watching my father get up every day at dark 30, come home after dark, many times not eat lunch, just a grinder, right? He gave it what he had to in that little small grocery store of his to put food on the table and a roof over our head. So I had a chance to watch him go to work every day, and I saw how he worked with people, how he engaged the customers. He never put himself above anyone or anything. He was always leaning in, working hard, helping his employees. And I found it was so interesting that, in my father's case, that, that when people know that they've got your trust and that you're willing to step in and help stock the shelves. Or, I mean, my dad, you'd see him shoveling the sidewalk.
Mhm.
stocking shelves, doing it all. So I had a great opportunity. My first break came when I was 22 years old, and that was to turn around a failing health club. And that was my big break. And I didn't know at the time that that was going to be my launch pad to building one of the largest wellness brands in the world. But these guys at 22 years old, they said, look, we're going to hire you to come in and manage this club. It was in my little hometown. And they said, if you can turn this around, we'll let you acquire equity in the business. That was my opportunity. Hey, look, when you've got no plan B, that is all. That sounded good to me. They paid me $16,000 a year. And they said, if you can turn it around, we'll let you acquire equity in the company. Over 8 years, I was able to turn that business around, and then went on to add 7 or 8 more clubs over the next 20 years, and then started Snap Fitness, which what then became one of the largest wellness brands in the world. So I never stopped. I always had one stepping stone to get me to my next place. And then it's just like my book, Impossible Hill. You never stop climbing, right? You get to one plateau, you look for the next one. And I think that's a good rule of thumb for anyone out there. Look, never plateau. Get to your peak, and then look for the next peak. Always be leveling up, always be driving. And the last part of it is, you know what? Don't be afraid to pull people along in the backdraft of your success along the way. And I've had the pleasure of doing that over the last 40 years as well. So I'm blessed. There's no question about it.
That's awesome. And what's funny is that for some reason, I don't think we talked about this story before, but I actually got my my journey didn't go quite as well as yours, but I got my first health club at 22. I started working for what became, it was called Q the Sports Club at that time. They had about 12 or 14 locations.
Yeah, in Arizona, right?
Yeah. And so I actually ran the Scottsdale Club and helped run the Camelback Club in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And so like I was very successful as a personal trainer in Texas. And then they said, hey, we want to give you, take over as operations manager for this club in Scottsdale. And I was completely unqualified to do it, but I made it work.
Yeah.
And we did about, just thousands of workouts a day.
Right.
But that's funny. And like I said, my health club journey didn't quite turn out the same as your health club journey. I did okay. And did that, but that's funny that was that same age range. And, but yeah,
Q Club did a great job too. They were nice clubs back in the day. They were nice. Did they end up selling the Lifetime? Is that what happened?
I think Lifetime and then 24 hour. I think all those clubs are 24 hours. So I don't know if they acquired the real estate or what, but yeah, I mean, it was a 50,000 square foot club, beautifully organized, great members. Charles Barkley was a member of our club, and David Spade and those kind of guys, because those guys are all from Phoenix. But is that something, this Impossible Hill thing, something that you see as part of the entrepreneurial spirit, or do you think it's like, because we on this podcast a lot of times I talk about the difference between a small business owner and an entrepreneur, and neither of them are better than others. I think in our day and age, a lot of small business owners see themselves as entrepreneurs, but they aren't necessarily entrepreneurs. In that capacity.
You know what, Kevin? It's funny you say. I mean, look, anyone that's in business, I think it's funny. I spoke one time at this university, and the class was, everyone in the classroom was majoring in entrepreneurship. Now, I always say, hey, look, congrats. If somebody comes up to me and I say, I ask, what are you? And they say, I'm an entrepreneur. My follow-up question would be, obviously, great. What do you do? What's your business? Right? That's a great follow-up question. What's your business? Now, if they said, I don't have a business. Have you ever owned a business? No, I've never owned one. Well, then you're not an entrepreneur. Okay. Yeah. I mean, being an entrepreneur, it's almost like a verb. It takes action. Okay. It takes action. You've got to, it's not that you can take on risk, but typically if you're an entrepreneur, that means that you put through your lens, you put your hard-earned money at risk. You're in a business. Doesn't mean if you're employing people or not. And it doesn't even matter if you win or you lose. Okay. Just because you failed at business doesn't mean you lose that shingle, that badge that you're an entrepreneur. Look, I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So don't let that deter you either. And I promise you, you take people that have managed to accumulate great wealth, they'll tell you a litany of stories of road rash and failures along the way to their road of success. It's just part of the game. It's part of the journey. Embrace it.
Is that something, do you think failure is necessary as part of that journey?
Well, you know what? In hindsight, early on, I would say, man, I hope not. But in hindsight, yes, it's part of it. If you fail one time after another, and you continue to fail, then I help people pull back. I mean, and that's part of what I do with my consulting. I help people pull back and say, okay, why are we failing? Many times they're failing because fundamentally they're focusing on the wrong items. They're not focusing on the big movers, the material things. That's easy to do. Why? Because you have no business experience. So you're kind of going by the seat of your pants. And if you don't have the appropriate mentorship along the way, that limits your chances of success. So, but definitely, if someone were to come to ask me, hey, Peter, tell me some of your success, I'm saying I can't talk about success until I talk about my failures, because that's where the gold is. The gold is in the failures. Make no mistake about it, right?
Yeah.
Learning and understanding what happened there. How did I lose? And not every failure that you make is gonna sink the ship, is gonna run you out of business. Some are less severe than others, but failure is failure. What's key is that you're paying attention, you pivot, you evolve, so you don't keep repeating those mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I've definitely made a ton of them and continue to do so. But and I think getting through that failure and learning from it ahead of time. I have a joke and say that I kind of, whenever I go into a new venture, new business, or new product, I'm like, all right, this is worst case scenario. I kind of expect to fail, so that then I can mitigate that risk and kind of that worst case scenario and that kind of thing. And so that's something, that failure aspect of it is something that tends to be super important.
I love that, Kevin. I love that and I do something very similar. For me, whenever I'm looking at a venture, what I'm measuring is the downside. Okay. That's where I start, because if the downside is too great, I don't do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what, the more you have, there's no shortage of people pitching businesses at me. And I've never seen a bad spreadsheet. You know what I mean? Everybody, they're trying to pitch you something. Everything's up and to the right. Can't go wrong. They're giving you their hard sell. I get it. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I want to know, what's the downside look like? What is the risk? And if it's palatable as to what my downside is, if things go extremely bad, if I can live with that, then, many times I'll move forward. Unless fundamentally the entire business is flawed, then I don't.
Yeah. And are there certain things that you would say would make a business flawed? I'm curious about kind of your evaluation process for that.
Yeah. It starts with undercapitalization because they don't understand the cash it's going to take to get the brand out in front of the people. People say, oh, social media, I've got this strategy. Social media, in order to get traction, still takes money. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it is, heaven forbid, if you do get traction, what's your scalability to manage the trajectory of what you're putting on that spreadsheet? Okay, how much human capital do you have to get you to where you are on that spreadsheet? And many times I haven't thought about the additional capital cost, infrastructure cost, all of those things. That's why I'm a big fan of people that come to me and they're bootstrappers. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're bootstrappers. I love it. Why? Because they're creative with their cash and they're creative with their people. They understand, the first 4 employees I have, they got to be kind of like Navy SEALs. They got to be able to multitask. And today that's more and more difficult because people, when you hire them, they say, what's my title? What's my role? And you got to have somebody that says, hey, Peter, here's the reality. I got a very vast skill set. But more importantly, I lean in, I learn fast, and I'm here to help. I'm here to pull on the rope any way that I can. I'll pull deep on the oars for you. Those are the kind of people I need in the trenches early on, because that's exactly what it is. The many cases, the business is evolving right before your eyes. You need to pivot a little bit, and you can't freak out over it. You just make your pivots, you make your adjustments, and you keep pressing forward.
Yeah, it feels like that you need more generalists than specialists, because that tends to be small business owners and entrepreneurs anyway, right? So you need more of those.
And they have the stomach for it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some people their world gets rocked so easily. Anything goes sideways. They're devastated, right? You can't be like that. Look, being an entrepreneur, I always say, one of my favorite words that my dad used was grit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know had unbelievable grit. In other words, they had a no quit attitude. They held themselves to a high standard of discipline and accountability, but that underlying foundation was grit. They weren't quitters. They weren't pussies. They were not afraid to lean in and work hard and work long if that's what it took. And that's the expectation I set for people. Hey, look, make sure if you're married and you have kids, get buy-in from everyone in the family. This is a journey that you are all going to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, having a front row seat to the American dream, wow, what an unbelievable blessing. Okay. But if you do it in a vacuum and you're coming home at night and your wife is mad at you because she thinks that you love your business more than you love her and you're not spending time with the kids, look, that's on you. You didn't spend the time, you didn't take the time to get buy-in from your wife and say, look, this is what I want to do and I'm doing it for us. Any good woman on the planet is going to say, you go
Mm-hmm.
get it, Kevin. You go get it for all of us. And what can I do to help? That's the kind of woman you want. And that's the kind of team effort you need at home.
Yeah, for sure. Having that full buy-in. And like, how do you see that balance? We talk a lot about balance on this because so many times as entrepreneurs, we want to spend 120 hours a week working, right? Which is not really sustainable for a long time. And unless you're a single person, probably it's not going to work out for the long term, right?
No, that's exactly right. And balance is key. And I think early on setting the precedents, I remember when I started Snap Fitness at the time I was married and I had three small kids. They were 5, 3 and 5, 3 and 2 or 1. And I remember sitting down with my wife at the time and even my kids who didn't have any idea what I was talking about, but just from the visual, you can see where I was going with it. And I said, look, I've got this idea and I had one store that was doing well. Okay. I had one store that was doing well and I was intrigued by it. And I said, look, I want to add another one, but if this is what I think it is, this could be something big. Now, I didn't know that I was going to go on and build Snap Fitness and Lift brands, okay? But in my gut, it told me, you know what? The numbers of this, the unit level economics, I loved it. When you're in the trenches and you're doing something and it's your idea and you're getting traction and everything is falling into place just how you visualized it, that's where I was. And I told them, look, I'm gonna be working hard. It's gonna be at least a 5-year commitment. I wanted to set that precedent out there, but I promise you, I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna go to work early, and I'm gonna try to be home by 6 o'clock every night. And that's what I did. I got up early. I went to work. My kids were sleeping anyway. I got up early, and I did that 5 days a week. If I had to work on the weekends and do a little something, I was always cognizant that I had time, spending some time with the family and with my wife. So not everyone, they weren't feeling neglected. It took an effort, and look, you know what, I could have done better at that. But we learn as we go because when you're growing like rocket fuel, like me, one year I opened 377 stores in 1 year. I mean, I was opening more than one health club a day, believe it. And I mean, I was just hanging on, by just driving, and it's what it took. But my kids today, they're great, they're balanced, and they say, hey, look, Dad, what you did was amazing, and you know what, the fruits of that will obviously, part of my legacy will go to them.
Yeah, that's I like the idea of buy-in, and I like the idea of bringing the family along, even if for some reason you're not. We have a lot of small business owners in this industry that we deal with that are husband and wife teams in some respect, which can work. But even if it doesn't, even if that's not part of the equation, then having that buy-in and really having the understanding and to your point, at least having guidelines to say, look, that doesn't mean 5 years of me working from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.
No, right.
And completely abandoning the family.
Yeah, and then
all that.
just keep yourself in check. Just like it's important today with hindsight. When I'm coaching people, I say, look, hold yourself in check. Hold yourself to the same checkpoint that you do in your business. You know how accountable you are in your business and how accountable you are to your employees and the success of your business. take a sliver of that accountability and hold it to yourself, your same standard as how you treat your wife, spend time with your wife, being present with your wife and your kids. So when you're home, you're actually home and you're mentally home, you're mentally engaged as well. And it takes practice. If you're a hard charger, it takes practice to fall into that place. And it's not that we don't slip. And that's where the honesty comes in with the relationship with your wife to say, hey, look, I'm flawed. We all are. I'm going to do my best. But look, it's inherently bred in me that I want to. I mean, if you're an old school guy like I am, and I had a front row seat to watching my father do it, what's my role? My role is to protect and provide. Okay. As old school as that is, men in this country, and some people are going to roll their eyes. Well, you know what? F you, right? Here's the reality. The reality of it is.
This episode is brought to you by Detailer's Roadmap. Hey, spoiler alert, that's us. We all know you need a kick-ass website in order to be successful with your business. The good news is at Detailer's Roadmap, kick-ass websites, that's kind of what we do. With the latest performance, designs, and SEO strategies, Detailer's Roadmap is your one-stop shop to be successful on the web. And don't forget, we have the best support team in the industry. Whether you're an existing partner looking to improve your lead generation or you need a brand new website, Detailer's Roadmap is here to help you be successful on the web. So go to detailersroadmap.com/success and get started today. That's detailersroadmap.com/SUCCESS.
Provide and protect. I'm going to get up and I'm going to drive and I'm going to try to provide and protect my family. That's what I want to do. And that's how I grew up. My dad worked every day, and my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, and she nurtured us and made sure we got to school on time and did the motherly things. Very traditional. I think it's beautiful. You don't see enough of it today, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's my wife was a stay-at-home mom. And she's a badass and worked way harder than I ever did. And she married an entrepreneur, which was, I don't think what she had in mind whenever we got together. But it's been fun for her in like the super crazy roller coaster kind of way, she says.
You got it. And it's great. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You can both embrace it. It's such an unbelievable journey when you're syncing on all cylinders with your wife and your kids, and everybody is and you take the time with those moments to say, hey, look, hey, Dad, man, great job. And thank you for those long days, those selfless days that you gave on behalf of all of us kids. So I'm sure your kids and your wife are very thankful and appreciative for the effort you put forth, because there's not a lot of doers out there anymore.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting time for sure. I do want to, what are some of the biggest challenges that are facing? I mean, you're dealing now because you're in a new franchise with the Acai Bowls and Nautical Bowls. And so like you're dealing with these small business owners and franchise owners and all that kind of stuff. What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing in our environment right now? That, some of them existed throughout, the last 50 years. Obviously, things are changing in the last couple of decades, but I know that we're facing some fairly significant challenges for small businesses. And on top of that, how do you advise these guys to deal with them?
Look, it's a great question, and it's really relevant in the dynamics going on right now. So when we started Nautical Bowls, stores were doing the corporate stores. I mean, early on, like the first year, corporate store did 1.2 million in revenue. Okay. Unbelievable. The next year, which is a little bit of an anomaly because that was COVID. The next year, it did about 800,000. So you're thinking, oh my gosh, 1.2 to 800,000. Hey, look, 800,000 is still an unbelievable number. Okay. So franchisees come into the system and they look at those numbers and they think, okay, my store is going to do that. Well, look, what we tell them is, we're going to help you in the real estate selection and whatnot. And even that store today that did 800,000, that store did it. But right now, our high water mark is about 650,000 of revenue, which is a great store, high performing, drops good money to the bottom line, successful business. But we tell people, we try to manage expectations. Look, the stores that are in that top 20%, they're there for a reason. What are they doing? Great customer experience. They get outside their doors. They're doing events. You'll see them at farmers markets. You'll see them at high school football games, college football games, graduation parties. They're not only doing walk-in business, but they're getting out and they're part of the community that they serve. That's the difference between winning and losing. Here's the reality. Franchisees come in and they go, hey, Peter, I'm going to be one of those top 20 percenters. And I say, I hope you do. And I'm going to give you all the tools to do it. But at the end of the day, it's got to be you out there doing the lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not going to go in and run your store. And they're all fired up about it. But the reality of it is when they get in there, when they get into the soup, into the daily grind, some people, they don't know. They think, man, this is more work than I thought it was going to be. That's, and I don't care if that's Nautical Bowls or take any franchise out there. Every franchise system out there has got their top 20% and their bottom 20%, and then everyone in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reality of it. And I can tell you, in most cases, the difference between the top and the bottom is effort. That's on any franchise brand I work with, and certainly all four of my brands.
Yeah. And do you think that so what challenges are they saying? Is it labor? Is it taxes? Is it exposure? I'm curious about those things.
Well, we learn as we look at it. We've evolved in 3 years. We've evolved. We realize we don't need as much seating in our stores. Okay. Early on, we do stores that are, 1,200 to 1,700 square feet, seating for 25, 30 people. Here's the reality. 80% of our guests, they walk in, they get their bowl and they leave. So what do we do now? Now, instead of stores being 1,500 square feet, they're 600 to 900 feet. What has that done? It's lowered the build-out cost by a third. That's a big deal. It's lowered your monthly operating costs by a third. Why? Less rent, less overhead. Okay. So we make that evolve to help our franchisees ensure a better chance of success. But other than that, we're looking at foot traffic, not drive-by traffic. That was another thing that we looked at. We thought people would pull in to get it. Hey, look, if they're not pulling into the parking lot, we don't have an opportunity to sell. So that's what we look at. Now, when we look at shopping centers, the analytical data is there. And we look at that data and we say, look, we need the foot traffic. So we've really enhanced the process to better give our franchisees a better chance to succeed. And, so it's all good.
I like the data driven, I'm super data driven. We do that with all our websites and all that stuff. We do a ton of data. One of the things I see, and kind of get your opinion on this, one of the things I see in our industry, in this industry that we deal with, detailing in particular, and I think Tent and PPF and these shops are doing it too, which is they always want to get bigger, right? Like that's there. And I don't really know where that 100% comes from. But they always kind of think, okay, well, if I'm doing, $50,000 a month now, if I double my size, I'll do $100,000 next month, and then so forth, and so on and so on. But you're saying, like in your case, you guys looked at the data and you said, okay, we actually need to be smaller in order to maximize the profit. And really, what it is profit per square feet, per square foot at the end of the day, and that's kind of our model as well. What kind of talk to that just ideology and what advice would you give in this situation?
Well, for us, I mean, just lowering the monthly operating costs on every front possible, optimizing food cost as much as possible. I mean, we've driven our food costs down from a year ago. It was at 45%. Today it's at 32%. That's significant. Everything we're doing is pointed in the direction of our franchisee to lower their overhead as much as possible to drive more profitability. Here's the reality in franchising. The more money your franchisees make, the more licenses you sell. It's a beautiful thing. So It's my job to try to get them there. In terms of the analytical data, I'm going to build, my store's 1,000 feet. If I were 2,000, I'd do twice as much. Don't subscribe to that logic. What I tell people to do, look, create a loyalty program where you have the information of your guest base. So you have your information. Now you know how far your guests are driving to frequent your store. You drop that on a Google map so you see where you're drawing from people. And that's your strategic move. That's your next location. Everybody gets wound up in this, hey, I need to expand. I need to sprawl. I'm all about it. But do it sensibly. Okay, let's drop your customer base on a map so we see how far they're driving, how far they're commuting, number one. Number two, what's the competitive pressure in your space? Now, don't be afraid of competition, because some competition is very weak. And what you're going to do is you're going to go in with a better product, better service at a better price point, and you're going to take their customer base. Welcome to capitalism. That's the beautiful part of capitalism, right? So I tell people, look, let's strategically look at where we want to go. What are the income levels? Who are the adjacent tenants that are going to draw like-minded customers to my area? What are the spending tendencies of the people within my trade area? Right? And see, those are all things that you measure. You put a point system next to it, and that way you can take 5 locations and say, look, this one over here is a 9, this one's a 6. And you wouldn't know it by just driving around. You got to look at the analytical data and say, look, this one here, it's a 9, and I know it's less population, but guess what? The buying throughput of those customers, the spending of that customer, it's more robust. They're more active. They're going to restaurants, they're spending money, they're going to movies, they're changing the oils, they're wrapping their cars, they're going on vacations. Those are the things.
Yeah, because I think the tendency is like, oh, well, wherever I can find a good deal on my on my rent is going to be the place that I put my shop. And I don't think there's a lot of what you just described and using that franchise model, like the whole, like how this is a system that works and this is what you do. That's something that I think all small businesses can go on. So like if I'm talking to somebody, we're talking to a lot of small businesses here and shop owners. And if you're going to locate or looking to relocate or change your size, that's great. Like that's gold advice that we just heard, which is really figure out the customer base in a given area, because revenue is a great number, but if the profit is the real number, right?
It's not what you take in the front door, it's what you take out the back door. And that's why I tell people too, hey, look, get out of this head, get out of your head space that you need to be 40% bigger. Unless you can justify what you're going to do with that 40%, unless you're going to expand your services where you see a demand for the service and you need that extra square footage for it. I'm all about that. No problem. But don't think you're going to do the same thing with 40% more square feet, doing the same service, the same product, and you're going to do 40% more revenue. It just doesn't work that way. So once again, if you, looking at this, do you have any limiting factors that are hedging, your revenue generating opportunities? And sometimes there are where you legitimately do need some more square footage. But I tell you what, I would rather start at a place that's small and be really efficient and dropping a lot of money to the bottom line, rather than I went too big and now I'm not cash flowing. I would rather start small and then grow into that. No problem. And once again, when I do it, there's a real strategy on expanding and growing your business. Where's your second location go? Where's your third location? Hey, look, you know what? You've got 3-4 locations out there and they're all making money. Now you can go back to that first location and say, look, you know what? I'm going to expand. I'm going to expand this an extra, 30%. Why? Because I've got 3 other stores that are dropping cash to the bottom line. It's not going to sink the ship, right? So we'll look at the analytical data. I'll go back to store number 1. I'm going to expand it and then try to drive that business. But there's a time and a place for all of it. And that's a lot of people, they kind of whiff when it comes to that. It's just all about expansion without a lot of thought behind it.
And is that just a matter of poor business education? Like I feel like that a lot of small businesses, and myself included, when I first started doing my thing, and I've learned over the last 25, 30 years almost, but do we just have kind of just a basic misunderstanding about how these things work in the small business industry?
Yeah. Look, here's the reality. We don't know what we don't know. Okay. And we're trying to go off gut and with drive and positive attitude. Hey, great. But that's only going to take you so far. All right. Today's day and age, you've got to look at the analytical data. You've got to look at what are the material things, the current business that you have in hand. You got to look at what are the big movers. Why are these people choosing me versus my competition? Identify what it is. Identify what makes you great. And you're going to do that through a number of fronts. Querying your customer base, not your friends. Okay. your customer, your regular customers. Hey, look, I got to know, I appreciate your business. why this business over anyone else's? What value am I bringing? Because it's easy to smoke your own exhaust or analyze things through a vacuum. Do it through your customer base. And when you start hearing the 3 or 4 things that make you great, those are the things that you should be doubling down on. And also, those should be the things that you're focusing on in your marketing effort. Okay. I see too many times people are promoting something within their business that they think their customer cares about. Their customer doesn't give a damn about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pet project of theirs. Okay. So I'm all about, look, focus on what the customer is looking for, because you don't want the best part of your business or your service to also be your best kept secret. Okay. Find out what your customers love about you and then scream that from the mountaintops, because believe me, these customers, they don't owe you anything. They're giving you honest feedback. It's important to understand it.
I mean, that's that's gold. That's golden information right there. I think that's and that's a great place to stop. Honestly, I think that's a good place to kind of wrap things up. Do you have any, if I'm and you and I have actually had this talk, and you may have already alluded to it, but if I'm a small business owner, I'm trying to get to that next level, I'm trying to take that next step, what kind of 1 or 2 pieces of advice do you typically give to almost everybody across the board?
Look, the first thing, if you're just evaluating yourself and evaluating your business, because you are the business, if you're going through this evaluation process, make sure that you truly understand your business and what fundamentally, what are the material things in your business that make it the business, that if you took it away, your customers would dry up. Understand what that is. As trivial as that sounds, you'll be amazed at the amount of business owners out there that don't spend enough time focusing on the real value that they're delivering. They're looking over here and they should be looking there. Okay. So understand your customer base. And then the second thing is, make sure that your message to the marketplace is honing in on what is driving your business. Okay. And if people say, I love the service, drill down on it. What is it about the service that you like? Is it that we vacuum your car when we're done? Is it that we have hot coffee in our waiting room? What is it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it how we greet you? Is it the energy that we bring? Understand what it is. And people don't put enough value on that, because I tell you what, in today's day and age, when everyone's looking for a quick buck and everyone feels a little bit underappreciated, it's nice to know. I know for me, when I go to a business and I'm supporting the business, I do it because I feel like they appreciate my dollar. They appreciate the opportunity I give them to serve me. Okay. Now that may sound corny, but I feel the value, because part of the value is not only what they do to my car, but how they treat me when I'm there. Okay. They treat me with respect. They get me in and out of there. They're respectful of my time. And then any little add-on things like vacuuming, giving the car a quick vacuum. You can do a quick vacuum in 5 minutes, and people put a value on that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just elevating what you're doing to another place that's not going to cost you a lot of money, but screams value. Those are some great points. And I don't care what business you're in, but that's where I would start personally.
I love it. I love it. Peter, thank you so much for giving us the time. I'm super excited to have you on here and share this with some more people. And thank you so much, man.
Anytime, brother. Anytime. Appreciate it.
Head over to detailersroadmap.com and get your one-stop success solution today.